where the they trade, watching the Canadian conversation and we are thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. She is award-winning author, speaker, and advocate sharing how unexpected friendship with a man experiencing homelessness reshaped by understanding of empathy, dignity, and human connection. No other than Miss Jody Zarn.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Welcome once again to one of my podcasts, Miss Jody, and Miss Jody is also the author of the book High Power Betty. So can you please introduce more about yourself that I may, Miss Jody?
Yeah, so I'm a corporate trainer in Canada, and I really love connecting with people, especially strangers. I learned at a very young age the power of a cup of coffee, sharing coffee with friends and neighbors, and how that can bring people together and unite us. And through some illness. I had skin cancer on my head a number of years ago, and we did a bit of a project where on the day that I had surgery, we asked people just to go buy coffee for people, coffee for strangers, and that really showed us the power of random acts of kindness and connecting the world. That day that we had the coffee day, the day of the surgery, we had over 800 people across Canada and the United States buy coffee and donate money to cancer care agencies and restaurants giving out free coffee. And it really showed us the impact of that one simple act of kindness can have on the world. And so that propelled kind of my mission in life to continue spreading kindness to anybody I met on the streets, and it has changed my life dramatically.
Well, Miss Jody, here on Abstract Essay, we celebrate you, we salute you for giving coffee to the world. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for inspiring us. Such a wonderful book as well. But today, let's talk about how unexpected friendship redefine empathy, which is related to your book, High Power Betty. You said you bought a first cup of coffee without thinking much of it. Take us back to the specific morning. What was happening in your life that day, and what made you stop for Leroy when many others had walked past?
Yeah, so that was a day that changed my life wildly, and I had no idea at the moment that it would change my life. I woke up thinking it would be just an ordinary day. I headed downtown to my office to work, and it was early November, and it was kind of the first cold day that we had in the city, and we live right in the middle of Canada. So in the winter, it can get wildly cold to the point where, if your vehicle were to break down on the highway, you would really stand the chance of freezing to death. And so I got off the bus at about 7:30 in the morning, and there were two gentlemen huddling for warmth in the lobby of the building where I work. And we often do get a lot of homeless individuals who frequent the neighborhood, so it's no surprise. And when I walked into the lobby and I saw these two gentlemen, I just kind of had this voice in the back of my head that said, "You need to buy these guys a cup of coffee. You need to do something for this guy." And as you know, like that's already been something that was a foundation of who I was. So I just really felt compelled to do it again. So I found a little coffee shop close by, and I got them each a large coffee and a muffin. And the first gentleman was a really tall gentleman. I'm only 5 feet tall, so everybody's tall to me, but he was a tall gentleman. He was a young guy, and he just had a little windbreaker on. He was missing the fingers on, I think it was his left hand, and he was very happy to get the coffee and muffin because it was cold out. And so he thanked me and went on his way. And then the second gentleman was on the other side of the lobby, and when I approached him, I realized that he was visually impaired. He was practically completely blind. He couldn't see who I was. And so Again, I didn't think much of it. I just introduced myself and I said, "Would you like a coffee?" And he said, "No." He didn't like coffee, but he'd take the muffin. And you know, we are a nature that shares everything that we do now with social media. If we have a good lunch, we share it. If we buy a new outfit, we've got to show everybody our new outfit. And so for me, this was no different. I felt compelled to share my experience, and so I had taken a photo of the coffee and muffins, and I said, "Hey, I met these guys downtown. I'm going to treat them to a coffee and a muffin." And I shared the muffin with Leroy, and I went up to work, and I didn't think anything of it because I do this routinely. I've done it, since then, and I didn't think that that would be the spark that would build a relationship. But what happened was the next day Leroy was back, and I just had a feeling even then that he was back because he was hoping that I would be there. And so I approached him and said hi. And he said, "Are you the same person as yesterday?" Because he couldn't see me. And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Well, I recognize your voice. So what's your name?" And I said, "Well, my name's Jody." And he said, "I'm Leroy." And that became the foundation of our friendship because every morning Leroy would meet me in the lobby of the mall. There was a little corner there that had a phone booth, and he would be waiting there when I got off the bus, and I would bring him goods from home and socks and mitts and whatever, and then I would be able to take, maybe 10 minutes to have a conversation with him before I headed up to work. And just having that 10 minutes was actually pretty powerful because it gave us a chance just to really gradually and slowly get to know each other, and for him to learn that I was just there to support him and not to change him or fix him or bulldoze him, which was really important. And so bit by bit, we became stronger and stronger friends and bigger allies.
Bigger allies, definitely. Yes. So, Miss Jody, you started by bringing tea and sandwiches, but somewhere along the way, Leroy stopped being a homeless man and become your friend. What was the exact moment you realized this was not a charity anymore? That was a real mutual friendship.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it happened over a real long process. So Leroy and I, formed our friendship in the mornings before I headed up to work, and then bit by bit he told me more and more about his life, and I think for a long time, he saw me as the helper, as just the person who was going to help him get off the streets or help him with stuff. And I saw him as somebody I was going to help. Um, our friendship together lasted 2 years, and in that time period, we were able to find long-term accommodation for Leroy, which was something that was life-saving for him because I think he would have either frozen to death on the streets or he would have been murdered because Winnipeg can be a very dangerous city on the streets if you're living down there, especially if you can't see. So eventually we were able to get him into a place, but at the same time COVID happened, and because everything shut down in COVID, we were unable to secure like an apartment or a suite for him to live because we couldn't view anything, and it was very difficult to find him something that was suitable for his needs. So Leroy spent a year in a hospital. I think it was like a geriatric ward of a hospital, and mainly because the social workers needed to give him a space where he had a bed and regular meals and somebody to support him. But what happened at that time, um, it was very hard on Leroy because he suffered from paranoia and delusions, and he was very, very mistrustful of people, and he would get very upset when his routine was disrupted. And I couldn't go visit him because of COVID. Like, I wasn't allowed into the building, and so every Sunday all I could do was phone him. And as you can imagine, with all the residents in there, everybody's trying to phone. And so it was very hard to get in and have a conversation with him. And if I wasn't able to phone, or if I didn't phone on time, then he would get very angry with me. But at the same time, unfortunately, what was happening in my personal life was my dad was going through a journey with dementia. And as anybody who's had a loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia can attest to, it's a really hard thing because you're gradually losing your loved one day by day. It's kind of like grieving their death one day at a time. And at the very same time as that, I had a child that I was supporting pass away. Um, I, aside from helping Leroy, I also supported a group of children in Manitoba who had a fatal disease called Batten disease. And it's kind of like the worst thing that you can imagine on a kid. It's kind of like having dementia and ALS all at once. And one of our children passed away at the same time that I was supporting Leroy and my dad. And if we care for others, I think the danger that we face or the risk that we face is that, we can give too much and we stop giving to ourselves. And I experienced a real sense of burnout when I was taking care of Leroy and taking care of my dad. And I just kind of shut down. And I'd probably been supporting Leroy by about 6 months by that point. And we don't get to pick how we burn out or how we shut down or how, the mental health issues that we have. It just happens to us, right? And what happened is that I missed phoning him one Sunday. Our routine was that I would always phone on Sunday, and I missed phoning him on Sunday, and because I just my child had this child that I was supporting had passed away, and I was dealing with my dad, and I just couldn't do it because it was very mentally draining to support him when he was so upset all the time, and so I missed another week, and then I missed another week, and I couldn't do it. And so I went a few weeks without calling him, but I knew eventually that I just had to. I just had to step up and make the phone call, which was really difficult because I knew that I had let him down. And when I called him, he was rightly so. He was angry with me because he felt like I had abandoned him. And so I did something that I really had never done before. And I was honest with him about what was going on with my mental health. And that's kind of something that we don't always do, right? Like in our world, we put on our happy face, our Instagram filter, and we like to show the world that everything is going great in our world and life is grand. And sometimes we don't want to tell people that life isn't great in our world or that we're suffering with mental health issues. But I knew I had to do it because I owed it to him. So I explained to him the situation, that I was burnt out and that I was having a hard time and that my dad was not doing well and that I had lost this child. And he was dead silent for a few minutes, which was unlike him because he really loved to talk. And finally he said, I understand. I get it. He said, I wish you'd called me, but I really understand. And it was in that moment that I think he saw me as a person, because up until that point I had just been the sandwich girl, someone who was there to serve his needs. And we kind of became partners. Then we became kind of family because then he became more interested in, how I was doing and how my family was doing and how my son was doing. And I stepped up and made a commitment to be there for him, but we also had to kind of establish some ground rules and some boundaries as to how that would happen so that both of us had our needs met. So that was a really pivotal moment, and it taught me that I had to be honest and it's okay to be vulnerable and open with how things are going in your world. And just to close this part off, is that it's kind of funny. I just had a conversation with my mom this morning, and she said that some people out in her community are really surprised that, with this book I've been able to be so raw and vulnerable with myself, because it's we don't usually just tell all our stuff in a book or tell people how things are going. And it's really been surprising, but I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned, is that being able to be honest with how you're doing and show kind of the dark side, having that vulnerability, it's liberating and it can show people that they can do it too, which is, I think, really a good thing.
A good thing indeed. And Miss Jody, you battled your own trauma from severe bullying as a child and losing your father to dementia. Leroy battled mental illness and paranoia. How did your shared experience of invisible wounds become an actual bridge between you, not the coffee or the sandwiches?
Yeah, great question. So this was kind of like a really, I think, a really life changing bit for both of us. When I first met Leroy, I began trying to find other people who knew him, who knew his backstory, and I met this one lady who, um, great lady. She called me the flavor of the month, and I guess Leroy had a tendency to really gravitate and let women help him. If people were reaching out to help and support him, because he felt like he was treated better by women. And What would happen though is that he would these women would befriend him and support him for a period of time, but then eventually, seemingly out of the blue, he would say, "No, I don't want to have anything to do with you again. You're done." And he would not talk to these people anymore. And so I think she was trying to give me the heads up that this would happen to me too, that at some point he would cut me out of his life too. And it never happened because I never tried to change him. And I think or I wonder what happened with these other people is that we have this tendency to want to really help, but when we really, really, really help, that means that we're taking the decision power out of that person's hands, and we're just bulldozing that person and just telling them how their life is going to be and taking away their choice. And shortly after I met Leroy, I just asked him out of curiosity. It was just it was a freak kind of accident how it happened, but I met him one morning and I was having a quick visit with before we headed up to work, and I said, what's your end goal here? Like, what do you want? Because I was just curious. I had never really had a relationship with a homeless person before, so I didn't know how this went, and I was just curious. Like, what's your end game? What do you want? And I thought he was gonna say, I want to get off the streets, or I want money, or I want stuff, because that would be the obvious thing. And what he said was, I want to have say in what happens to me. I don't want to be bulldozed. I want to be the one who decides what happens in my life. And that was a real wake up call for me because I realized that that's what we all want. All want to say in what happens in our lives. And that became kind of like the gold standard for how our relationship went. And I think it's why he never did kick me to the curb where he did other people, was because I always knew and I respected the fact that even though he was living a life that I certainly couldn't do, and he was maybe making decisions that I maybe wouldn't have gone with, I respected his right to make the decisions in his life, and I let him know that I would always, support that. So when things got kind of dicey with how plans are going, I would say, "Hey, you're the captain of your ship. You're the boss here. You decide what you want to do." And that really kept us together because he knew that he could count on me. And later on in our journey, I realized that I think that we need to be accepted for where we are in our journeys and not kind of pressured to be fixed. And one part that I show in my book is the fact that I have like this weird driving fear. I've had trauma happen on a highway, and I was almost killed on the highway a number of years ago, and that just really changed me. So I have a lot of anxiety when I get in vehicles if or I'm driving in like a real bad rainstorm, if it's snowy out. And not everybody understands that because up here, like, I mean, if you want to get anywhere, you have to drive, like 3 hours on the highway. And it's not a very common fear or problem that people have to face. And, I've had people tell me, well, you just need to get over it. You just need to get over it. Or when are you going to get over it? When are you going to get fixed? And and I've been made fun of and I've been mocked because I have this fear, this trauma that nobody else seems to understand. And it's really that part has affected me more than the trauma itself, is this lack of empathy and this lack of understanding for what I've gone through. But what I realized is that because I have been in that boat where people have mocked me, judged me, pressured me to get fixed, um, I could really relate to him. And I didn't try to mock him or pressure him to get fixed or healed in order to get support because I got it. I needed that same acceptance and understanding too. So our journeys were kind of parallel in a way, and I think that's why we were able to have the relationship and build the trust that we did in the end because I got it. I understood what he needed.
Well said, Miss Jody. Most people want to fix homelessness. You didn't try to fix Leroy, you just kept showing up. What's the difference between solving someone's problem and truly being with them in their struggles? And why does the second one actually work better?
Oh yeah, it's because I think I think we all have this need to be seen and understood for who we are and celebrated for who we are, and respected, and and allowed to be loved and accepted where we are in that particular part of our journey. And I've done some research into the homeless world, and you know how systems work. And there's a program that a lot of places follow. It's called Housing First initiatives, and it's where, rather than encouraging our unsheltered community members, rather than mandating that they have to get clean, they have to get sober, they have to, you know, get fixed with their mental health issues in order to get housing, or in order to get the support that they need, we flip the script and say, okay, we're going to get you housing first. We're going to get you set up in accommodations, and then we're going to help you on your journey to get clean, if that's something that you want, or, you know, get sober. And so I think, you know, if you think about it, there's dignity to that, because um I don't know how many times I've heard someone say, you know, oh well, you know, I don't want to give a homeless person money because they're just going to spend it on drugs, you know, that kind of thing. But the interesting part is that that means that they're not worthy. They're not worthy of support, or they're not worthy of anything, or even the choice of how they spend their money, because they're living a life that we don't really endorse or understand or value. And Leroy had an incident when he was in a hospital. He got picked up a couple times and put in the hospital while he was homeless. And there was one particular doctor that said to him repeatedly, he said, Leroy, you're a danger to others. You're a danger to others. And it, you know, Leroy did suffer from very serious mental health issues. There's no question that he did. But that really damaged his sense of self-worth, because it made him feel like he was a bad person, and it made him feel like he was really less than. And it doesn't matter where we are in our life. We all deserve to be valued where we are. And I think one thing that some of us, we might forget, is that I couldn't be homeless, because I couldn't stay alive out there, you know? Like, that takes a sense of, you know, street smarts and grit and determination and inner strength, just to stay alive for a night out there, not to mention for 15 years. It's a tough job. And our homeless individuals are still people. They're people first. And we need to always be keeping staying mindful of that, because everybody deserves that sense of dignity, that they're valuable human beings, no matter where they live, no matter what their experiences have been. And if we can do that, I think we can build relationships and really help people.
Well said, Ms. Jody. And to wrap up our discussion for today, if a listener takes nothing else from this conversation, what is the single most important insight you want them to carry in their tomorrow? Stay in that one sentence they can write on sticky note.
Hmm. Good question. Like, one sentence, that's tough. But, you know, I think the biggest thing is that, to really look beyond that label, and really get curious about the people that you're with, and celebrate the people that you're with. Fun fact for Leroy, he was not somebody that you would think that you're meeting. Like, when we see homeless people on the streets, we have all these assumptions, you know, maybe addict or criminal, or, you know, all this stuff. But Leroy was the very best checkers player in all of Canada. He was the third best checkers player in Barbados, and the 12th best in the entire world. And he was wildly intelligent. And, you know, if we can encourage our listeners to just be curious about everybody that they meet, whether it's an unsheltered individual that you see in a bus shack, or, you know, whoever it is, uh, every person has a backstory. They all have skills, they all have talents, they have a family, they have a background, and they all have something valuable to offer to the world. And rather than clinging on to these labels and holding on to those misconceptions and judgments, open yourself up to really getting curious about the people and celebrating people, because you will find that your life will be so much richer when you get to know the people around you, and the magic that they have to offer.
The magic indeed. So, Miss Joey, can you please invite our listeners to support Higher Power Betty?
Sure, sure. So Higher Power Betty is available on Amazon worldwide. So anywhere you get books on Amazon, you can do that. And my website is jodyzarn.com. So it's jodyzarn.com. And yeah, you can learn a little bit more about myself and for Leroy on there. I did a TED talk about this a few years ago, so it's on there. And yeah, please reach out if this story impacts you in any way. It's a cool story.
A cool story indeed. So, Miss Jody, before I will let you go, I have one more question. If Leroy is who is Leroy right now, I should say. You challenge listener to look beyond labels. So let me ask you directly, is there someone in your life today, maybe not on the streets, but in your building, your family, your team, whom you have walking past without truly seeing? And what would it cost you to stop and buy them a cup of coffee tomorrow?
Yeah, there's always somebody that you can get to know better and connect with and find their story. And I'm addicted to it. I love I love buying people coffee and seeing the look on their face when somebody gives them a spontaneous kindness for no reason other than they deserve it. The energy that comes out of that is pure magic and it makes my life so much better.
Pure magic indeed. So, Miss Jody, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. This was a blast. You're awesome.
Likewise. Much